Well, we are going to go ahead and get started. Again, it is an honor for me to be hosting this conversation rather than a presentation. I really look at this as a conversation. And today's event is titled "Voices from Abroad: A Student Conversation Celebrating Latinx Heritage Month." So I just want to thank again all of you for joining us today. And more importantly, Martin and Chelsea, Kat, and Natalia, I'm so excited to be meeting you all for the first time. But obviously, I've heard wonderful things about you all. And for me, you know, most of the work that I do is with students before they go abroad. Not to say that I don't work with students on site and even in the re-entry phase, but, you know, just yesterday I was in Texas, you know, working with students as they gear up to be in the place that you all are in. And so I think one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here with you all is because you all currently studying abroad. And so it's not often that I think we get to hear voices live, you know, while you all are abroad and living this transformational experience in what is study abroad. And so I want to go ahead and before we get started through a series of questions that I have, I want to give all of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And I'm just going on the order of our event page here. And so I just want to give you, you know, a couple quick minutes to go ahead and introduce yourself, perhaps mention the IES Abroad Center that you're studying in and your home institution. So we'll go ahead and get started with Martin, if you can get us, if you can kick us off.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Lopez, and I am currently studying in Paris, France, and I come from Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. I'm from Mexico, but I moved to California when I was really young. So I grew up in California, also in Mexico, and also I had to move to New Mexico to finish my high school. So those are the places that I call home. I'm currently studying in Lewis and Clark College, French and Russian as my major, and I'm also doing a minor in this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Martin. I appreciate it. Let's see, let's go ahead and Chelsea, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? Actually, I'm not sure if Chelsea is on yet, but let's go ahead and move with Kat. I did see Kat that was logged in, so go ahead, Kat.
Okay, hello, I'm Kat, and I'm currently studying in Granada, Spain. So that's where I'm calling from, and I go to Scripps College in Claremont, California, which is greater Los Angeles area. And I'm originally from the greater Palm Springs area of Southern California. So I'm totally California girl through and through. I'm studying linguistics and Spanish, and I'm super excited to be here today and talk about this, about being Latinx and sharing that experience with you all today.
Fantastic, Kat. Thank you so much. The best coast. I'm currently in Chicago, but I hope to one day make it to California. So you have to give me some tips on that wonderful state. And I believe Natalia, who was having some technical difficulties earlier, is now back on. So Natalia, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, you guys. My name is Natalia. I'm actually from Chicago. I currently go to Purdue University. I'm double majoring in English and Spanish and minoring in global studies. And I am currently in Barcelona right now with the journalism and communications program.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Natalia. I really appreciate it. And let's see, I'm not sure if Chelsea was able to make it today. So if Chelsea, if she is not here yet, we're going to go ahead and just get started. And hopefully she'll be able to join us in the next few minutes. So before getting started with these questions that I have for our wonderful students and really getting a conversation going, I also just want to introduce myself. My name is Hernando Garcia. I am now an assistant director of special initiatives at IES Abroad, and I'm very proud to have just recently been promoted to that, because it means I get to work on the things that I'm very passionate about, whether that's expanding DACA accessibility to international academic experiences to DACA students, or whether that's really engaging with minority serving institutions. I'm very proud to be able to do that at an organization that truly holds those things to dear to really what our mission is. And so I did see, I think actually maybe Chelsea just joined us. I did see in the chat. So I also want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself. If you could hear us, Chelsea. Okay.
Hi, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Hi, so I'm sorry, I'm having like a bit of technical difficulties as well, but I'm Chelsea. I'm studying in London right now in the Study London program, and I am majoring in international politics, and it's really lovely to meet you all.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chelsea. And so what I was saying, and seeing as, this is a celebration or a continued celebration of Latinx Heritage Month, I always like to start, my introduction by saying, as a proud Colombian immigrant, I woke up today more Colombian than yesterday, and tomorrow I'll wake up more Colombian than today. So that's something I hold intensely proud as part of my identity. I love my country. I love my culture. And despite being here in the United States, as I said, my Latinx identity, my Colombian identity is something I hold very dear. And I wanted to share a little piece to really acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day yesterday, because I believe this is a good way to start our conversation. And we'll certainly be touching upon some concepts and some points that I think are directly related to that. And so I wanted to share a little piece that I wrote. My students yesterday, actually, I'm also in one night a week, I am an adjunct faculty at a Hispanic serving institution. And yesterday I wrote to my students saying, on Indigenous Peoples Day, I want to honor those that originally called these lands home, acknowledge the importance of this date, and highlight its centrality to some of the concepts that we have discussed in class. Obviously, we're not in class, but I think some of the concepts that we will be discussing today, whether that is decolonizing the curriculum, or whether that is holding our Latinx identity as a central component of what it means to be Latinx in the United States. I think that it's certainly important to acknowledge yesterday's date and to really elevate those Indigenous voices and our Indigenous legacy that has been silenced for so many years. And so now we're going to go ahead and get into it. And I'm really excited about this conversation, especially because I want to highlight that all these students are IDEA correspondents. And to give you all a little bit of background on what the IDEA correspondents are, this is named after for our initiative to diversify education abroad. And IDEA correspondents are students of diverse background in regards to race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, identity, gender identity or expression, non-traditional major, physical, mental health, learning ability, socioeconomic status, and or first generation in their family to attend college, who share how their identities intersect with their study abroad experience. As part of Latinx Heritage Month programming at IES Abroad, we celebrate these students, uplift their voices, and honor the contributions of the Latinx community to the mosaic in the United States. So with that introduction, I want to go ahead and get started with posing some questions for you all. And the first question that I have, and directly related to this wonderful program that we have at IES in terms of the IDEA correspondence, elevating student voices, in particular minoritized students, is a primary goal of the IDEA correspondent programs. So I want to hear from you all. How do you feel this platform has allowed you to share your story in the formative space of study abroad? And how can storytelling inspire others to embark on an international academic experience? So since we got started with Martin last time, how about we do Natalia? How about Natalia, you get us started with that question. And I'll go ahead and also post a question on the chat in case you, the audience or you all need a little reminder of what was posed.
Okay, perfect. I guess I'd say like the storytelling aspect definitely is what made me interested in study abroad. I first studied abroad in high school, and before I did, it was never even a possibility, I guess, for me. It wasn't something that I'd ever thought about, not something that was on my radar at all, I guess. And through something like this, I read somebody's story because I had known friends who had gone and studied abroad, but to me, our lives just weren't the same. Their reality was a little bit different than mine. And through a program kind of like this, I read somebody's story who was closer aligned to mine, and I realized that like it was a possibility, that it might not look exactly the same, or the same process might not have been the same as the people I had known, but it was still something that like was possible for me. And I think that's something huge, because even like my friends back at home, I talk about how I am here and like how it's like accessible to people through different like means and like different programs and stuff like that. And before I had gone on this trip, they had thought like I was lying. They were like, no, you're just saying that because like that's what you say, you know. And being here and being able to share and tell my story with others kind of makes it more of a reality for more people who have similar backgrounds to me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Natalia. How about Chelsea?
Hello. So this actually ties into why I decided to study abroad in the first place. Like, I very much wanted to sort of represent Latinos abroad, because growing up, I didn't really have that many examples of like family or relatives going abroad. It just wasn't in our financial capabilities. And also I'm a first generation student. So when I decided to study abroad and I saw that the IES had IDEA correspondence, I thought it was an excellent way to sort of pass it forward. You know, like if I got here, if I had the opportunity to study abroad and I had a chance to share my story and highlight my voice, that other Latino students would feel empowered and encouraged to also study abroad. So I think that's an excellent platform, because the more students that we get on here, the more Latinos that we will have studying abroad, and the more that we will represent each other very well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that insight. What about Martin?
So for me, I feel like this platform has allowed me to share my story, first of all, by acknowledging that we exist, that we're here, that we're present, because definitely being a Latino and going abroad is definitely, I will say, definitely something different. Because like, for example, when I was growing up, I'm also a first generation student. I never had anyone from my family go and study abroad. And I'm also the first person to ever study in my family. So it's definitely a way that I am allowing myself to share my story and inspire other people and make them see that this is actually possible. When I was in high school, I wanted to study abroad so bad, but I didn't have the resources. But now my college has provided me with the resources, and also IES. It's definitely a possibility, and it's something that I been trying to share and to inspire other students like me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Martin. And then Chelsea, I believe, if you can wrap us up with this question.
Okay.
I actually just answered.
Oh, so sorry. So Kat, so sorry. That was Kat.
No worries.
No, sorry.
No worries. Yeah, so I think this is a really important question, and I agree with all the other speakers with what they've said. I just feel like this platform has really given me an opportunity to tell a story using my own voice in a way that hasn't been edited or changed to fit a norm or a standard. And I really appreciated the opportunity. And I think also it's given me a chance to reflect and evaluate my own experience along the way. and just sort of put out that reflection on paper and online and have other students read it, because representation is so important. And for me, I feel like I didn't see a lot of that in a lot of spaces growing up. And I felt like this could really be a place where my experience could resonate with somebody, or they could see somebody like me and feel connected to it. Because like other speakers have said, I also come from a first generation background. I've never studied abroad before. I've actually never traveled outside of the US before. So this is my first time doing all of that, and especially alone, it was really nerve-wracking. But I was inspired by other students' stories, reading their blogs and looking at what they had said before I studied abroad. And I want to do the same and do that for future students as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And if I could, just maybe highlight some of the things that were discussed, and whether it was earlier Martin sharing, being born and raised in Mexico, and, being an immigrant, and also the intersectionality of his identity of also being a first generation student. As Chelsea shared with us, the intentionality to use her voice as a member of the Latinx community to inspire others to study abroad. And as Kat quite literally just said, representation matters, right? Representation matters. I don't think statistics tell us everything, but Latinx students now make up nearly 20% of those that are enrolled in colleges and universities, yet they only make up 6% of those studying abroad. So as we hear from all these students, and even as a student myself about a decade ago, as I was studying abroad and as a member of the Latinx community, I didn't see anyone that really looked like me, that really look like us. And I think the importance of what these students are sharing is that their voices are quite literally inspiring the next generation of students that look like us, students that are members in our community, to partake in these experiences that perhaps we would have never imagined to be able to partake on. And lastly, I do want to share an incredible blog that I read from Natalia, and it has to do with her departure. And obviously all these students as IDEA correspondents, all their blogs and their social media are available online, but I'll be sharing some, I think, through the chat, because I think it encompasses some of the points that we're discussing. And I think in this post, and Natalia does such a beautiful job to really express all those emotions that we as members of the Latinx community may be feeling before we embark on this trip. That, for example, for Kat, it was the first time leaving the United States. For many of us, it could have been the first time for us to study abroad, and what that conversation maybe looked like with our parents, and things of that nature. So I certainly wanted to share Natalia's eloquent way to really share all those emotions that I think many of us can relate to as we embark on really a transformational trip. So thank you for that. And we'll go ahead and move to the next question. And in your opinion, I wanted to get a sense of how you all believe the Latinx experience changed or evolved or has evolved in the United States, and what you think is the biggest misconception or misrepresentation about our community. How about we get started with Kat?
Okay. This is definitely a big question, so we'll see if I can say some things about it. Definitely, everybody's Latinx experience is different. And I feel like maybe that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that we're not a monolith. We don't all have the same experience. We don't all have heritage from the same places. And for some people, that's a little bit difficult to understand, but I think it's really important to have your own identity within the Latinx community. And in the United States, obviously the situation has changed a lot. There are a lot of issues surrounding immigration, surrounding, access to health, especially now, is really important. And also just I think the difference between my experience being on a college campus and being back home in my community is really different as a Latinx person, because I go to a historically white institution where I'm definitely in the minority as a Latina student. And there are even fewer first-gen students and even fewer lower income students at that school. And so I really feel like I'm sort of I have to speak for my community more there, which I'm very happy to do. But when I go home, it's a little bit different. There's a larger Latinx community there. And it's hard to reconcile those two worlds, where I feel like I don't have to be a spokesperson at home, but I do in other spaces. And I think it's really hard for all of us to work through. I don't want to speak for anybody, but it's really hard for me to work through personally. And now I'm adding a different sphere to my life, which is studying abroad and being in a new country and having to experience my identity here. So it was useful for me to think about the challenges between school and home, and sort of translate that to my experience here and saying, okay, what are the differences between school and here or home and here? And that has sort of helped me navigate a lot of the struggles or issues that I'm experiencing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kat. What about Martin? Martin, what do you think about this?
In my opinion, one of the ways that the Latinx experience is changing and evolving is that the older generation of Latinx have been putting up like more spaces and more places, programs where we can share identity, where we can feel connected. Personally, most of the institutions I went to throughout my educational history, I've encountered programs where I feel that I can share and be myself, although I still think there is not enough, but there is that idea growing and evolving in the US. I also think I totally agree with Kat about the biggest misconception we all don't come from the same background. Yes, we are Latinx, but we all have these different little pathways, little details that makes us even more special, more different. It's just it's a lot to put into one label.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with both of you more. Thank you, Martin. What about Chelsea?
Yeah, so I feel like Kat and Martin touched on a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about, but I think that the Latin experience has changed in a way that before, I feel like people had to sort of mask themselves a little bit and sort of water down their identity and stuff. Like, you know, if you had an accent or you spoke a certain way, that you felt the need to sort of mask that a bit and not fully be yourself. So I feel that previously, like Latinos haven't always had the space to sort of be themselves and be proud of their heritage. And now we're seeing like sort of reclaiming that and being much proud of where we come from and the things that make us who we are. So yeah, it's really beautiful to see, because now you're seeing a lot of people also engaging in that, and also like allies trying to also uplift us. And the biggest misconception or representation about our community that I feel is that, like Nat said, that we're all very similar, that we're all the same. We all have very different experiences. We all grew up in very different households. Like Latinos may share a language, but we also have different foods. We have different dialects. We have different traditions that are also beautiful. And I think people just, when they see Latino, when they hear the word Latino, they just think of like one monolithic like community, and that's couldn't be farther from the truth. There's so much to celebrate, so much to highlight, so much diversity within our community, and yeah, I'm really happy to engage in that and uplift that further.
That is amazing, and you four are truly incredible ambassadors of our community. And Natalia.
I completely agree with what she said before about how we didn't necessarily have space to be ourselves. I think a lot of the problem, like she said, either like watering yourself down or not being able to truly show. Like I know in high school, I very much tried to, I went to a majority white school, and even like I have always, since I've been little, worn bandanas and hoops, and that haven't been anything strange or different for me. And then going into high school, being surrounded by this like culture of whiteness, that definitely was, I guess, like a shock to me, you know, and it was expected that I would change my behavior. And like now, as times have gone and like this has become a conversation, you know, it definitely has given me and like the people that I've been around room to express themselves how they want and show who they are, whether that's through their culture or through anything else. And the misconception also that all Latinos are going to be the same. You know, like we're all going to look a certain way. And with that, I think that space to be who you are is also part of that. I personally, I dye my hair. I'll have red hair, I'll have purple hair. It'll be different, you know, and that didn't necessarily fit in with this idea of what people thought a Latina looked like, you know. Or I have like a couple of different piercings like on my ears, you know, like that centralized idea of like what people picture Latino or Latina to be was solid, you know, and now it's definitely growing and expanding. And instead of people thinking of a certain like category, it's become more people, you know, so Latinos and Latinas can come in all shapes, sizes, colors. And I think that's also huge, is the colorism within the community. And I think with time, it's grown to show that there are Afro Latinas or Latinos, and that our community is more than just like what you see on TV. So I definitely think that.
Wow, well, that's incredible. That's a lot to unpack, and I could probably spend an hour in discussing everything that that all these wonderful students just shared with us. But the one word that I heard a lot was the phrase that I heard a lot was the Latinx community is not a monolith, right? And I think that's incredibly important to and something that we've had to share, that we've had to fight for, to get access to these spaces that historically we've been marginalized from, right? And so I think that makes me think of the power, I think, that our community has, and that so often has been marginalized. But we're here to stay. As you're hearing from all these wonderful students, we are proud of our heritage. We are proud of our identity. Colombia and Mexico aren't only drugs and violence. Colombia and Mexico are culture and amazing food and absolutely complicated histories. But as you hear from all these wonderful students, that our Latinx heritage and our identity is central to who we are. And I think that's incredibly important for those that may often think of, again, the Latinx community as and applying the one size shoe fits all, which is clearly not the case. You know, whether we're talking about it politically, you know, the way that a fifth generation Cuban American in Miami may vote differently from a second generation in the state of Arizona, or religious beliefs, or whether it is the different kinds of, even within Latin America, right? Brazilian speaking Portuguese and Haitian speaking Creole and Colombian speaking Spanish, and I think that's something that I think is really powerful from everything you all just shared. Martin also shared, I think, a great point that will tie back to our next question, but also a post of Martin that I wanted to share. And I think it was regarding representation of our identity. And that makes me think that representation of our identity in the curriculum specifically. And for us here at IES Abroad, I know we're always striving to diversify that curriculum. And I think for those that are joining us today at institutions and our wonderful partners, I think working together to ensure that Latinx identity identity is represented throughout the curriculum and throughout the courses that we're studying once abroad. You know, a story I always like to share, you know, Chicano studies programs in the United States were born in the 1970s in the state of California. At the institution I graduated my undergrad, the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, the first Latina studies majors and minors graduated in 2001. So if it took that long in this country for us to implement, to highlight, to elevate Latinx voices, there's a lot of work to do in terms of the curriculum abroad. But I think what's so fascinating is that to see students like Martin, like Chelsea, like Kat, like Natalia currently at centers, currently pushing these ideas, currently writing about the importance of their identity, that certainly tells me that we are headed in the right direction. And once again, that our community is no longer fighting for a space, because we're here to stay. And we are members of this country, and we continue to contribute to the mosaic of this country. And I think that's something important to realize for those that believe that you know, the Latinx community is still trying to find its foothold, or we have to make an argument as to why we should be valuable, or we can make valuable contributions to this society. Because to me, these 4 students are an incredible example of them just doing that. But the post I wanted to share that Martin wrote about, and it's actually that Martin wrote about, and that it's titled "A Baguette Filled with a Salsa of Cultures." Highly encourage you all to read this, but a quote that really stood out to me was regarding that Martin says, "Another important aspect of my identity is culture." So I think to wrap up, you know, what this question really encompassed, I think it's really regarding, you know, we are proud of our identity. We are proud to come from where our parents come from where our ancestors come from. I mean, I started this entire conversation, you know, honoring the indigenous legacy that we also all have. And so I just want to thank you all for I mean, it's almost like you guys make me even more proud to be part of the Latinx community. So I think tomorrow I'll certainly be waking up more proud to be Colombian than ever. So just incredible. And thank you all for sharing that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to the next question. And I think this is really interesting because, you know, oftentimes as one of the, I forget who this, and I'm writing notes because I want to highlight really all the wonderful points you guys are sharing. But one of you all shared how, and I believe actually it was Kat, regarding, you know, when we're abroad or when we're at home in our communities that, you know, are largely Latinx, but when we travel abroad, or maybe when we're even on campus, as Natalia shared, in primarily white institutions, our identity can take different forms, right? I think something incredibly powerful that was just shared that I can certainly relate to is, you know, oftentimes like this kind of crazy idea of assimilation. We have to assimilate to the dominant culture, and we have to get into this, and we have to, you know, whether it was Natalia sharing, you know, she's gonna dye her hair because she wants to dye her hair, and I don't care if that doesn't fit into what people expect Latinos to be. I remember being in high school and going to, you know, my best friend was white, and I remember being embarrassed to talk to my mother in Spanish, and I would go to the bathroom to talk to her in Spanish. Today, you know, I'm not embarrassed to share that because I've had to explore aspects of my identity and how problematic it was for me to hide some aspects of my identity, because as I stand today, I'm a proud Latinx immigrant. And so I wanted to ask you all, you know, I've heard a couple comments regarding, you know, the kind of the tension between our identity at home and the different kind of let's say aspects, or how that looks differently when we're abroad or in these spaces where we don't have that tight-knit community of people that look like us, of people that share our culture. And so the question is, I want to hear from you all, how do you feel your Latinx identity is perceived by those in your host country, in where you're currently studying abroad? So if we can get started with, let's get started with Chelsea.
I'm so glad that this question was asked because so London has a very small Latin community. It's there, but it's very much you've got to seek it out. You know, it doesn't come at you the way that, like I'm a New Yorker, so, and I'm Dominican American. So Dominicans and Puerto Ricans are very represented in New York. So being in London, I've had to sort of carve out and look out for my Latin community. So I feel like when being here in London, that identity has sort of to citizens has taken like a backseat. Like I feel like people in England see me as American before they see me as Latin. So I've had to grapple with like, maybe that's not the most important aspect to them about me, even though it's so integral to who I am. So I've had to sort of, I've had to put more effort into seeking it out. Like, for example, I went to a Dominican salon and I was talking to the hairstylist and I was like, why is there no like more like places like these? Like, I know that there's like a community, and she told me that people were afraid because they were told that not a lot of people would seek out their business. Not a lot of people they wouldn't find a market for it. So it's just quite interesting to see it to be like, for Latinos to be such a minority. But that's why I love being here, because I get the chance to sort of talk about it and bring exposure to it. So it's been really interesting to sort of balance my American identity with my Latin identity, because you're not American when you're in America. You know, it's who you are, but like you are where your parents are from. So here it doesn't really work like that. I've had to just really try and seek out my community and make sure that people also recognize that that's something that's really important to me.
Wow, fantastic. You just made me think of things that I've never really thought about. So that was amazing. And shout out to New York, by the way. Kat, what do you got?
I completely agree with Chelsea about this phenomenon of feeling like we're perceived as American first and Latinx second. I for sure experienced that here. Another thing is, I'll share, I'm a mixed race student, so I'm half white and half Latina, which is also a really different identity to work through. And while there are challenges in the US, here I feel like it's even more pronounced. I feel a lot of pressure to prove my Latinidad. There are also a lot of questions about like my ability to speak Spanish here. My parents don't speak Spanish, and like that's a really unusual thing. I feel like sometimes when I'm in larger Latinx communities, and I do feel like kind of pulled, if I identify with my like white American culture, am I betraying my Latinidad if I'm like, so being pulled in different ways. But definitely here in Spain, there's a very clear history, obviously, with colonialism, unfortunately, with colorism, with indigenous cultures. And I've definitely witnessed all of that, experienced a lot of that. I'll just share an experience that was a little bit difficult. We were taking a walk through a section of Granada, and we saw a few people dressed up as like going to a party. Some were like cowboys and stuff, and there was one person who was dressed as a Native American, which it was really shocking to me. Obviously, if I had seen that in the United States, it would also be really shocking, but just because of the history here and the relationship between Spain and Latin America, you know, psychologically, it still affects us today. And so that was really hard, but I was able to find a community here where I could talk about that, share that experience, work through it together, which I was really grateful for. But, you know, those are things that will be experienced here. And so hopefully sharing that was helpful. But overall, I feel like my Latinx identity, once I'm able to talk about it with a lot of students here, is perceived well. And I feel like they take something from the conversation and they feel like they learn something. But I feel like that's what I can say about it.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Kat. And I'm sorry you had to see that, but I'm glad you found community to be able to share that. And that's something I want to point out for our guests, that microaggressions, or whether it's blatant acts of racism, like we see it, and we have to process it, right? And so we're going to call it out when we see it. And I think I'm glad that you found community, Kat, to be able to process and discuss those things. Martin.
Okay, I'm also really glad that this question was asked, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about. So, okay, so here in France, there is not a lot of Latinos, because most of the Latinos are down in Spain. There is just a really, really small community. So I haven't been able to speak Spanish with anyone yet. But so yeah, so talking with the people around here, like when I mentioned that I'm Mexican, there is also those stereotypes that come right away. And also this perception of seeing, like, people definitely perceive you, not everyone, but a lot of people perceive you as exotic, because it's it's something that I have experienced here so far. Also, I mean, it's just really interesting to maybe go to the supermarket and like find like the special sections where there is like what they call it here ethnic food or exotic food, and find that all of that food comes from Latin America or Africa or the Middle East. Another thing that I found really interesting though was that with my identity, for example, I'm taking a translation class from in which we translate from French to English, English to French. And one of the first things that was mentioned that, oh yeah, we're gonna be translating mainly from French to, from English to French, because if we translate from French to English, it's easier to translate into your mother tongue. So that was another thing. I was like, wait, English is not my mother tongue. It's actually Spanish. So that's another thing. And also another thing that I have encountered was decolonization history. I'm also taking a history of colonization in Africa class. And it's just so interesting to have also that background behind, and to be able to, think about it to a deeper level into it. Another thing though I have encountered here in France was that when I mention, so far my experience has been that if I mention like, oh, I'm from the US and Mexico, I never get a question of, oh, like, where are you really from? Because something that I noticed here in France is that like there is a lot of people that are mixed, and there is, because of the colonization history, like with Algeria and like all of these things that happen, there is a lot, there's just a lot, there's just a big combination, a big mixture of people here. So that's one thing that I've noticed, and I don't know, it's really interesting to also, for example, in the US, my first culture shock when I moved to the US was the little box check that you need to check about your ethnicity or your race. Yeah, that doesn't exist here, and that was just really interesting to see. So yeah, it's it's a lot.
Wow, amazing. Thanks for sharing that, Martin. And then Natalia, I believe you're last on this question.
I was also, like everyone else, really excited seeing this question. There is so much that everybody else has said that I completely agree with what Martin was saying. This idea of race, of white and black, doesn't really exist, right? Because that is a very American thing that stems from like our history of slavery and like things as such, But with that anti-black racism that we do have in America is very clearly seen here. Like Kat said, the colorism here and the nationalism is something huge. I am very clearly not white passing. And I think the idea that people have about America and Americans, like, I very much confuse people. I've never had a very strong tie to America. Like, I'm not very patriotic, I guess, in that sense, but I always have had like strong roots. Like, I'm from Chicago. That's always been something for me. And so people from here I wouldn't say I'm bilingual, but I definitely can speak Spanish much better than the people in my program. I don't sound quote unquote American, I guess. And every time I talk to my mom or I call back home, I'm always talking about like how I confuse people. And they'll ask me like, cause I don't have a Spanish, like Spaniard accent, and I don't sound like an American or look like what they think an American should look like. And so they ask me like, why do you speak Spanish? And I'll be like, oh, like my family, you know, like that's what it is. And they're like, oh, where are you from? And I'll be like, oh, Chicago. And they'll be like, America? Are you sure about that one? And it's this conversation of, it's not very diverse here in Spain. Not a lot of different types of people. And I guess I personally took that for granted in America. And to explain to people that America is all different colors and types of people, you know, that Latinos do have a place in America. It's not just like what you see, like, I guess, like in our TV and in our shows, that like I do fit the standard version, I guess, of like what an American looks like, you know, because America is everything. So it's definitely been interesting being here, because that is always my first interaction with people, whether it's like on an IES tour and the tour guide is asking me like, oh, you sound like you know what you're talking about, like what's going on? And they're not satisfied with the answer, like I'm from America or I'm from Chicago, which is usually my go-to. They want to know more, like where are you really from though? Like what is the background here? Just because I don't fit the American standard, you know, I'm a little bit darker, have darker features, different things like that. And because of that, because it is very much, it's very colorist, very nationalist, I guess I would say, very much by country. When other Latinos find other Latinos, they are ecstatic. The part that I am in, Barcelona, just the area, there's not that many Latinos, I guess. It is more scattered. So whenever I do see somebody, they get so excited. Like last night, we went out and I'm half Mexican, half Puerto Rican. And there was a Puerto Rican at the bar and they were talking or whatever. I was like, oh, you're Boricua. And they got so excited. They were like, the Boricuas are here. Like, da-da-da-da-da. Like, there's finally another one. Like, oh my God. And they also were not even directly from Puerto Rico. But because they were also like me, like, they're not white passing, that is what people identify them as. And it was also confusing for them. So I think the people that I have met here of like some type of Latin or ethnic descent has been super kind, super friendly, super excited to share that experience with somebody else. Just because, like Kat was saying, the colorism is for sure a thing here. And that goes back to the anti-Black racism from America. You know, we were in a bar called Kentucky, which everybody is like, the locals that I'd spoken to were super excited, like, oh, it's like the perfect American bar, like they have American drinks, they give you popcorn with your drinks, da-da-da-da. When we went, they had a photo of blackface in the back. And for me, I go to school in Indiana right now, so that definitely was jarring, but more disappointing, you know, of like, it's still here, you know, it's still following. And we spoke to the owner, and she was like, oh, like you guys are the first people to have ever told me that was something offensive, you know, like our theme is the South, our theme is America. And to know that that is the sentiment that America has, you know, to know that blackface is part of the theme of America, it just kind of, it makes you feel some sort of way, you know, especially when you are identifying as American. So it definitely has been interesting being here and seeing how those different things of race play a part of everything here. So it's definitely been a wild experience. There's not a lot of people of color in my program, even less Latinos or Latinas. But the few of us that there are, we definitely, for the most part, like have banded together. I don't think it was even intentionally, but just like seeing someone that kind of feels like your community, you know, that you feel like that comfort with, kind of feels safe. we definitely have become friends, and that has helped, you know, because rather than it just being me of people being like, where are you from? Like, no, this doesn't make sense. Like, you don't look like you're American. What is going on here? To have three of us, I guess, that are all different backgrounds to kind of help explain, like, America is more than just like white, you know? But it's definitely been an experience. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, Natalia, and all of you. And for the sake of time, I'll be really quickly on the kind of the recap. But I heard from Kat this concept of Latinidad, and for all of you that may not speak Spanish, really, to me that means that our membership and our place in the Latinx community, right? And I think we won't let anybody define that for us. We are going to define that ourselves. Just as the United States government, in the census, labeled us as Hispanic, when as we hear, many of us have ties to Latin America rather than Spain, just based on the language. I think that's an incredibly important concept. And whether it was Chelsea and looking out that Dominican salon, or whether it was Natalia and her Mexican identity, and really that hyphen in between Mexican and Puerto Rican, and exploring that in this formative space of study abroad, I think is incredibly powerful. So for the sake of time, this next question I am going to, and we have two more questions, so I'm going to, if you guys can share maybe a succinct answer. And this was a two-part question, but we've already heard about some challenges you all have faced already, you know, whether that is exploring your identity in a place where there aren't a lot of Latinx students, where it was Kat seeing someone dressed as a Native American, whether it was Natalia seeing that Black face. But I want to hear from you all, what has been your favorite part of studying abroad so far? A specific moment, or someone that you met, or can you share your favorite part of study abroad so far? Let's get started with Martin.
I think my favorite part so far just have been the memories that I've been making with my friends who I met in the program. It's been great to be with them and exploring around the city. I've also met a couple locals, and it just has been a really wonderful experience to go out and like sponsors, dance. Those have been my favorite parts so far from the program.
Fantastic. Kat, what about you?
My favorite part has definitely been interacting with the locals here. I feel like it's so easy to have like deeper connections faster here, because everybody just kind of gets to the point. There's not a lot of small talk, and I'm able to learn a lot in even just this short conversation about values, about cultural differences. And I feel like they feel the same way on the other side of the conversation too. So my favorite part has just been getting out, meeting people, getting to know what they do on a day-to-day, and also sharing my experience.
Amazing, fantastic. Natalia, what about you?
I kind of the same. The locals clubs just opened up this weekend for us, and that has kind of helped me find like more of my group. There's this Latin club that does bachata and salsa that's like 15 minutes away from me, and I was able to meet other Cubans from Cuba, other Dominicans from the Dominican Republic, and dance with them and just like kind of connect and like and meet the kind of group that I hadn't been able to meet.
That is awesome. As a member or being born in the salsa capital of the world in Cali, Colombia, I love to hear that you found some salsa over there. So that is fantastic. And then Chelsea.
So London is such a cool city. So I really had a lot of fun just exploring it with the people in my group. I'm taking a university course from a local university in London. So we've had the chance to like talk to some of the students there, and you get to really see like how British people, like young British people our age, really see us. So it's been quite interesting to sort of connect, and yeah, we just have a lot of fun. I feel like for the first time, like really like kind of like an adult, you know, like I had to do everything on my own, and it's just really nice to have the support of people from my program.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing that. Makes me want to go abroad again. And we're going to wrap up with this question. And I think this is incredibly important, not only for myself as an international educator, not only for our center directors that are here present today, some of our partner institutions, but I want to hear from you all. What is your advice for Latinx students and other minoritized identities who may think that study abroad isn't for them? What would be your piece of advice to encourage them? And as I said, your voices are truly what will inspire the next generation. What is your piece of advice for other Latinx students that may not think this is for them? Let's go ahead and get started with Chelsea.
Okay, so my advice really succinctly is just absolutely go for it. I didn't come from a privileged background at all. Like I said, I was first generation. I didn't have the resources. I was sort of like driving myself crazy thinking about how I would pay for this. But if you really want it, things will come together. There's enough support, there's enough scholarship, there's enough people there to help you if you just reach out. Like, your dreams can come true. This can happen for you. And it's an experience that you will never forget. It is so important now more than ever for Latinos to go abroad, represent our community, and leave a lasting impact. Like, just to occupy space. You can do this, and your parents and everybody around you will be so proud of you, because it's really hard to do, but I'm confident that every single one of you, if you put your mind to it, can do it.
Amazing, Chelsea. Thank you for that. Natalia.
I guess to like put yourself first. Definitely for these study abroads, it's going to be sacrifices for everything, you know, and there's definitely, I guess, at least personally for me, a sense of guilt. You know, I was leaving behind, especially with everything going on in the US right now, leaving behind so much, you know, but definitely put yourself first. You know, you need these experiences, and everybody will be happy for you to go through with that. And if you go through with that, it's not only helping you, but your community, you know, and who knows who else you'll be able to help from that experience.
Amazing. Thank you, Natalia. Kat?
I would also say go for it. And also, if there's a will, there's a way. I definitely didn't have the resources, and I didn't think that study abroad was a possibility for me, but I knew I wanted to do it. And I talked to everybody I had to talk to. I went to every avenue I had to go to, and I found a pathway to get here. And you can too. They're available. You just have to go out and find them. And that your experience is important, that you deserve to be here. That's something that I feel like people don't hear a lot or tell themselves a lot, is like, you deserve certain things. And that people will benefit from your experience, hearing about it, and you'll have the time of your life. You won't ever forget it.
Amazing. Thank you, Kat. And Martin.
So the thing that I will say is that it's okay to be doubtful. It's okay to be the first person in your family to do it. It's okay to have fear. It's definitely something nerve-wracking, but at the end, it's totally worth it. And also, it's important to remember the inspiration that you will bring to the Latinx community, because your story is going to inspire other people. It's study abroad. It's for everyone, and there are the resources out there to help you do it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you all so much. And before wrapping up, I do want to acknowledge some people that have joined us today. And because I believe that the reason that these students are here today, the reason that IES Abroad values the Latinx community, first and foremost, I want to thank Cesar and Tania. You are all incredible in what you do at the centers. I mean, I just heard from a student myself. Well, the reason I went to Sevilla, Spain, was to explore the colonial legacy that my country has had due to the colonization of Spain. And in a country like Spain, in a city like Sevilla that I fell in love with, as a student just shared, that's present to her. And I know that center directors like Cesar allow and actually encourage our students to explore that. So Cesar, I want to commend you, and I know, Tania, you do incredible work with Jimena and our center, so thank you all for that. And Natalia, you're certainly lucky to be in Barcelona. I also want to thank Dr. Gregory Hess, because since you've joined this organization, I have seen my community represented, our students, those voices elevated, and I just want to say that I see you in the impact you've had in really allowing us to push these initiatives forward. I know Rich Bartecki was here earlier, so I want to thank him as well. I also want to thank Sharon Lee for joining us today. She's at the University of San Francisco. She's a wonderful, wonderful example of work that institutions are doing to elevate Latinx voices. There's this concept I want to introduce in terms of institutional allyship, and that is a wonderful institution, University of San Francisco, for those that are joining us today to be working with to elevate these voices. And lastly, to all of you, and I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional, but I see a lot of my story in you all. And Martin, Kat, Natalia, Chelsea, there is no greater IES ambassadors or IDEA correspondents, but more importantly, there's no greater ambassadors to our community. You all have inspired me, and I think many of us that are here today in such an incredible way. And I'm getting emotional about the greatness of this conversation, and I just want to let you know I want to be a resource to you all for the rest of my life, whether that is reviewing applications or just chatting about your experience when you come back. I mean that from the heart, Chelsea, Natalia, Kat, and Martin. I hope we can stay in touch, because you have left me inspired to continue to elevate voices like all of yours, because as I mentioned in the beginning, the Latinx community is an important part of the mosaic of the United States. So I just want to thank you all. You are all fantastic. I have such deep admiration for you four, and onward. I can't wait to see what you all do with the rest of your lives, because I know you all will make history. So thank you all for joining us today, and to you four again, you are all fantastic. So yeah, thank you, and again, we are very proud of you all as IDEA correspondents, but more importantly as members of the Latinx community. So take care of yourselves, and I'm sure we will be talking soon.